A pall of dusk settled over the edges of Godric's Hollow, street lamps flickering to life in the creeping gloom. Within the snug confines of a borrowed safe house, Lily paced anxiously, the uneven creak of the floorboards marking each of her steps. At the center of the sparsely furnished living room stood a small table bearing 2 items: the Heartstone of Murden, carefully nestled in a velvet pouch, and a half-filled goblet of shimmering potion that Snape had spent the last few hours refining. Nearby, Eileen dozed fitfully on a sofa, blankets piled around her. She was still pale, beads of perspiration shining on her forehead. Sometimes she stirred with a soft moan, still caught in the feverish grip of the lingering curse. The stolen artifact from Ruadan's Keep was their only hope of purging that curse for good, but harnessing its power was proving more complex than Lily had feared. In a corner of the room, James Potter leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes flicking between Lily and Eileen. Despite the complicated history that stretched between them, Lily had to admit she was relieved by his presence. Sirius Black, seated at the far end of the sofa, tapped his foot in restless impatience, while Remus Lupin hovered near the kitchen door, checking on the state of the wards. Snape himself was in the adjoining room, hunched over an ancient tome that Dumbledore had personally entrusted to him. Lily pressed a hand to her temple, trying to chase away a headache. Snape says the potion should be ready soon. Once Eileen drinks it, we can bind the Heartstone's energy to her. It's the final step. James nodded. And after that, she'll be free of the curse? His tone carried genuine concern. Sirius muttered, "If we don't get ambushed first." Tension crackled in the air. After the harrowing encounter at Ruadan's Keep, none of them believed the Death Eaters would simply give up. A relic as powerful as the Heartstone was a dangerous threat to Voldemort's plans. He'd want to destroy it or steal it for his own twisted ends. Lily paced again. "We have wards up, and we're under the Fidelius charm. But with the Death Eater's new tactics, I'm not taking anything for granted." Remus emerged from the kitchen. "The wards are stable for now, but we should remain on high alert. Any sign of infiltration, we apparate Eileen out." A cold dread twisted in Lily's stomach. She'd come too far to lose everything now. She nodded, glancing at Eileen, then turned to peer through a slit in the curtains. The quiet lane outside showed nothing amiss, just the glow of a street lamp over the cobblestones. Still, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that darkness was closing in. A tense mixture. In the makeshift laboratory next door, a simple bedroom repurposed as a potion brewing station, Snape worked in near silence. Sweat beaded at his temple as he carefully stirred the silver lilac concoction clockwise 3 times, then reversed direction. A swirl of vapor rose, tickling his nose with a metallic tang. The Heartstone, now resting on a cushion on the windowsill, pulsed faintly, sending flickers of light across the cramped walls. Snape exhaled, recalling the desperate moments in Ruadan's Keep. He could still taste the dust in his mouth, feel the sting of his injuries. But those memories only heightened his resolve. If he could perfect this final infusion and channel the Heartstone's power correctly, the curse-draining Eileen would at last be stripped away. She was his daughter. Every microgram of potion had to be exact. "Steady," he muttered to himself, adding the final ingredient. A single drop of his own blood, a symbolic contribution to strengthen the bond. The potion flared hot white, then settled into a shimmer. If the references in Dumbledore's tome were accurate, this brew, combined with the stone's innate magic, would shatter the malevolent hex coursing through Eileen's veins. Snape tapped the stirrer, letting the mixture settle. A swirl of relief fluttered in his chest. Yes, it was ready. Without delay, he snatched up the potion, tucked the Heartstone back in its pouch, and stepped into the living room. The others watched him with tense expectation. Lily rushed forward. "Is it done?" Wordlessly, Snape lifted the goblet. "She needs to drink this. Then you and I must perform the incantation while holding the Heartstone against her chest. The synergy of paternal and maternal magic is key." James stood straighter, looking at Eileen's frail form. Sirius shifted uncomfortably, as though he wasn't sure if he should stay for the ritual or guard the perimeter. Remus quietly said, "We'll give you space. We'll keep watch outside." Lily nodded, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you." The ritual begins. Sirius and Remus left through the back door, wands in hand. James lingered a moment, eyes flicking between Lily, Snape, and Eileen. "If you need anything, call," he said simply. Then he followed the others, leaving the small family to the delicate process of saving Eileen's life. Snape set the goblet on the side table and knelt beside Eileen, carefully pulling down the blanket. Lily gently propped their daughter up against the sofa cushions. Eileen's eyes fluttered open, confusion and pain swirling there. "Darling, we have a potion that might help," Lily whispered, brushing Eileen's hair aside. "It might taste strange, but you need to drink it all." Eileen tried to speak, but only managed a faint rasp. Snape raised the goblet to her lips, guiding each sip. The girl grimaced at the bitter tang, but managed to swallow it down. As soon as she finished, the Heartstone began to glow, as though sensing the completion of some vital step. A glimmer of magic danced in the air around them. Lily's throat tightened. She clutched Snape's arm, and together they recited the incantation from the ancient text. Inter meridium et tenebras, conoscimus cor liberandum, a maledictus fiat solutio. Their voices wove together, Lily's warm and trembling, Snape's deep and steady. The Heartstone flared, shooting rays of emerald and gold into Eileen's chest. The girl shuddered, back arching against the sofa, her mouth opening in a silent cry. Lily's heart hammered. "Eileen, hold on," she whispered, tears gathering in her eyes. She pressed the stone over Eileen's heart, feeling a surge of sizzling magic beneath her palm. Snape ground his teeth, continuing the chant. A swirl of energy emanated from the stone, wrapping Eileen in a cocoon of shifting light. For a moment, Lily felt a warmth that was almost comforting, as though the artifact recognized their desperation. Then the magic pulsed outward, rippling across the room, rattling windows and knocking picture frames from the walls. Eileen gasped, her eyes snapping shut as a wave of dark vapor erupted from her chest, swirling into the air. It screeched, a high-pitched, malevolent sound, before dissolving into nothing. The Heartstone's glow subsided, dimming to a soft glimmer. Eileen went limp. Lily let out a choked sob, pressing trembling fingers to Eileen's neck, searching for a pulse. Snape stared, unable to breathe. Then Lily felt it, the strong, steady thrum of her daughter's heartbeat. Relief rushed in, nearly buckling Lily's legs. Eileen's breathing was deep, calm, and her feverish sweat cooled on her brow. "It worked," Lily whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. She's free of it." Snape exhaled, shoulders sagging with exhaustion. Yes, the crisis that had weighed on them for weeks seemed to evaporate in an instant. Eileen was safe, but even in that moment of triumph, Lily felt an uneasy prickle across her skin. The wards. Something was wrong. In the next heartbeat, the back door smashed open. In the blink of an eye, a shriek of curses filled the air. Lily spun to see Sirius and Remus tumbling back into the room, wands slashing through the haze of incoming spells. Behind them, black-robed figures surged in. A half-dozen Death Eaters, masks gleaming malevolently in the flickering lamplight. Sirius shouted over the din, "They're breaching the wards, some kind of key or dark artifact." Before he could finish, a crimson curse splintered the kitchen doorway, sending shards flying. Remus countered with a shield charm, but more curses crackled in from behind. Two Death Eaters forced their way in through a window, glass clattering across the floor. Lily's heart hammered in her chest. She dropped to shield Eileen with her body. Snape leapt up, wand drawn, unleashing a flurry of hexes at the intruders. He moved with lethal precision, deflecting one Death Eater's killing curse with a blazing arc of protective magic. James, who must have heard the commotion, burst in from the hallway, already launching a disarming jinx at the black-robed wizards pouring in. "Get her out!" he yelled at Lily, voice shaking with urgency. Eileen stirred, Her eyes fluttered open, clarity returning. Lily helped her stand, bracing her daughter's shaking limbs. They had to flee, but the living room was under siege. Curses and spells ricocheted off furniture, chairs exploding in splinters. Sirius, hair flying around him, battled two Death Eaters at once, forcing them into the corner. Remus summoned a hail of stunners that pinned another attacker against the far wall. But it was not enough. More Death Eaters were outside, and Lily could sense reinforcements massing. The wards that had once shielded them now lay in tatters. Snape whirled to Lily. "Take Eileen through the flue. There's powdered flue in the next room." Lily hesitated only a moment, then nodded. She clutched the Heartstone in one hand and steered Eileen toward the corridor. They made it 2 steps before a jagged curse cut across their path, scorching the floor. A Death Eater barred their way, wand aimed squarely at Eileen. "Don't move!" the intruder hissed, mask contorted in the flickering lamplight. Lily's anger flared white-hot. She shielded Eileen, pointing her wand with steady resolve. "Stupefy," she snapped. The Death Eater conjured a shield, deflecting the spell with a crackle. Another curse soared back at Lily, striking the wall behind her and sending chunks of plaster down in a suffocating cloud. Eileen pressed against Lily's side, trembling. But the girl's eyes, newly cleared of fever, held a flicker of defiance. Lily's protective instincts roared to life. She and the Death Eater exchanged a rapid volley of hexes, red and blue bolts dancing in the swirling dust. Lily managed to slip a silent, disarming jinx under the Death Eater's shield. The intruder's wand flew out of his hand, clattering onto the half-collapsed coffee table. Lily wasted no time, whipping her wand again. Petri Ficus Totalis, binding him in an instant. Without looking back, Lily guided Eileen around the crumpled body. "Keep moving," she urged, heart pounding. Cornered. In the living room, Snape and James fought back to back, picking off Death Eaters in tight bursts of wand fire. Old animosity was momentarily forgotten in the face of a shared enemy. Sirius, battered but defiant, continued to duel near the front door, trying to seal it again with half-shattered wards. Remus was pinned behind the overturned sofa, countering curses spat by a robed witch whose mask had cracked enough to reveal hate-filled eyes. Suddenly, a new voice sliced through the chaos, cold and mocking. Well, the traitor and the mudblood once again defy us." A tall, imposing figure strode in, wearing richly embroidered robes. He didn't don a mask, instead letting the flickering lamplight reveal angular features twisted in arrogant contempt. Snape's gaze snapped to him, recognition flaring. "Travers!" he spat, voice dripping with venom. Travers smirked, stepping over the fallen Death Eaters. "The Dark Lord grows weary of your interference. Snape, it ends tonight. Hand over the Heartstone." James launched a stunner at Travers, but the wizard casually deflected it, sending a rancid spark that blasted a hole in the mantle. Sirius cursed under his breath, firing a hex. Again, Travers deflected with practiced ease, then snarled a counter-curse that cracked the floor open between them. Snape advanced, wand raised, eyes like steel. "You'll never have it." A swirl of purple energy crackled around his hand, and he lunged forward with a powerful hex. Travers blocked it, though sweat beaded along his temple as the force pushed him back a step. For an instant, Snape and Travers stood locked in a deadly dance of unleashed magic, arcs of shimmering curses colliding between them. The daring escape. Down the corridor, Lily yanked open a door, revealing the fireplace that led to the flue network. She rummaged in a battered crate for the emergency flue powder. Eileen clung to her arm, eyes wide. "Mom, I'm okay now, let's help Dad." Lily's throat tightened. She could hear shouts and explosions from the living room. "Eileen, I need you safe," she choked out. "You've only just recovered." "But..." "No time," Lily insisted, pressing the flue powder into Eileen's hand. "You go first. Go to Remus's safe house. I'll follow right behind you." Eileen hesitated, tears welling, but at Lily's desperate nod, she stepped into the fireplace. The green flames roared to life as Eileen vanished, the words "Remus's Haven" echoing faintly. Before Lily could follow, she heard an explosion from the living room that rattled the walls. Plaster dust rained down. Her heart seized. She couldn't leave Snape out there. Clutching her wand, she sprinted back toward the fray. Through the swirling haze, Lily caught sight of James wincing behind an overturned chair, nursing a cut on his arm. Sirius and Remus were side by side, pushing back two more Death Eaters. And in the center of it all, Snape faced Travers in a relentless duel. Travers's wand spat out a searing green spell that flew past Snape by inches, scorching a hole in the wall. Snape retaliated with a vicious flurry of hexes, his face a mask of grim focus. Lily hurled a disarming charm at Travers, hoping to catch him off guard. His shield wavered, but he pivoted with snake-like speed. Hissing, "Crucio!" Time seemed to slow. The curse arced through the air. Snape was partially turned away, casting another hex. Lily realized in horror that he wouldn't block it in time. A fierce wave of protective rage surged through her. Without thinking, Lily dove in front of Snape, wand raised. "Protego!" she screamed. The shimmering barrier met the Cruciatus curse, absorbing it in a blaze of red sparks. Agony washed through Lily's muscles as the shield cracked under the curse's vile pressure. But it held long enough for Snape to whip around and send a withering stunner at Travers. Travers staggered, breath wheezing, but managed to dodge, leaving the stunner to shatter a cabinet behind him. He sneered. "Always so heroic, aren't you, Mudblood?" Snape stepped forward, livid, but Lily grabbed his arm, voice urgent. "We have to go." Eileen's through the flue. "Now!" James scrambled to his feet, brandishing his wand at two approaching Death Eaters. "We'll cover you. Go!" His eyes flicked to Lily, then to Snape. Whatever bitterness remained between them had no place in the moment. Sirius, battered and bleeding from a shallow cut across his cheek, barked at Lily, "Get out! We'll hold them off." Remus was panting, hair matted with sweat, but he mustered a grim nod of agreement. "We'll be right behind you." The swirl of curses intensified. Lily seized Snape's hand, adrenaline spiking. Together, they retreated down the corridor. A Death Eater tried to intercept, but Lily and Snape combined their spells. A stunner from Lily and a slicing hex from Snape, to drop him before he could speak a word. In the fireplace room, Lily grabbed the canister of flue powder, voice quivering. "Go first, I'll follow." Snape hesitated, lips parted as though to protest leaving her behind for even a second. But the thunder of spells grew louder, a sure sign that the Death Eaters were on their heels. With a rapid nod, he threw a handful of powder into the flames. "Remus's Haven," he said sharply. Emerald fire roared, and he vanished. Lily spun, wand at the ready, expecting a last-second assault from one of the intruders. Smoke and dust curled in the air, the door splintered by repeated blasts. Her stomach clenched as she heard the echo of Travers's voice, fury resonating through the house. Another crash indicated that James or Sirius or both were dismantling parts of the house to hold him off. Swallowing hard, Lily tossed the remaining powder in and stepped into the flames, shouting, "Remus's Haven!" The last thing she heard before the flames devoured her was an enraged shriek and the deafening crash of wood snapping under the force of dark magic. Safe, for the moment, she tumbled out of the flue into a dimly lit cottage. Strong arms caught her, and she blinked up to see Snape's drawn face. Relief, anger, and gratitude warred in his dark eyes. Eileen stood just behind him, tears streaking her cheeks, arms wrapped around her own trembling body. "Are you hurt?" Lily demanded, scanning Snape's figure. Smoke and dust smudged his clothes, but she saw no fresh injuries aside from small scrapes. "I'm fine," Snape managed, voice hoarse. "What about you?" Before Lily could answer, Eileen rushed forward, hugging Lily with surprising strength. The girl's tears dampened Lily's robes. "Mom, Dad, you're both here." Her voice wobbled, but there was life in it that hadn't been there for days. Lily cradled Eileen, pushing back tears of her own. "You're safe, sweetheart. That's all that matters right now." The house was silent except for their ragged breathing, the hush a stark contrast to the chaos they'd just escaped. After a moment, Snape turned away, pacing. "What of James, Sirius, and Remus?" he demanded, fear flickering in his eyes. Lily felt a pang. Those three had held the line so she and Snape could get Eileen away. Had they made it out? As if answering a prayer, the Floo roared again. Out came James first, stumbling slightly, hair more disheveled than ever, clutching his bleeding arm. He caught his breath. They're right behind me." He shot Snape and Lily a glance of relief. A second burst of green flames spat Sirius onto the cottage floor with a yelp. He sprawled, chest heaving. Lily rushed to his side, but he waved her off, coughing at the swirling ash. "Remus," he choked out. "He's..." The fireplace flared once more, and Remus collapsed onto the hearth. His robes were shredded at the hem, and a streak of blood trailed down his leg. Without hesitation, Lily conjured bandages, her healer instincts kicking in. Snape dashed to retrieve a potion from the small trunk they'd managed to bring earlier. James dropped to Remus's side, pressing a cloth to the bleeding wound. Sirius grimaced. "We had to blow half the living room up to distract them. Travers and the rest. Still there. We saw no point in sticking around." Snape helped Lily administer a quick healing draft to Remus, who groaned but began to breathe easier. Tension drained from James's face as he realized his friend was going to be okay. In the hush that followed, Lily's gaze swept over the battered group. Eileen, pale but awake, Snape grimly checking injuries, James with a gash in his arm, Sirius bruised and smoldering with resentment, and Remus wincing at the pain in his leg. They were alive, and Eileen was free of the curse. But Lily could sense that the victory was only partial. The Death Eaters had discovered how to penetrate their wards. That meant nowhere was truly safe now. The artifact might have served its purpose for Eileen, but to Voldemort's followers, it was a symbol of defiance. As the adrenaline ebbed, Lily rose, pulling Eileen close. "We have to plan our next steps," she said, voice trembling but determined. "They won't stop here." James nodded. Travers seemed determined. "They'll come for us again." Snape cradled the empty Heartstone pouch in his hands, the gem inside now quietly inert. "It's job done, for now. Then we make sure we're ready," he said, voice calm in a way that made Lily's heart twist. He'd been fighting all his life, first for his own survival, now for his family. If the Death Eaters wanted a war, they would get one. Sirius struggled upright. "We'll have to move again, find a new location, rebuild wards, and we'll need the Order's help." Remus, still shaky, nodded. "We regroup. We strike back." Eileen sank onto a small chair, hugging her knees. The color was slowly returning to her face, but fear lingered in her eyes. Lily knelt beside her daughter, brushing back her hair. "You're safe," she repeated softly. Outside, the Scottish night pressed in, cold and foreboding, but a renewed resolve coursed through Lily. The Death Eaters had retaliated once, and nearly claimed their lives. They would be back, more determined than ever, and the fight ahead promised to be relentless. Still, Lily and Snape would not bend. They'd found the power to save Eileen. They would find the strength to protect their small family and the wizarding world at large. For now, in the flickering lamplight of this tiny haven, they clung to each other, battered, but unbroken. And though the Death Eaters had left destruction in their wake, Lily refused to let fear eclipse the knowledge that Eileen was free. They had won a crucial battle, but an even more treacherous war lay ahead, waiting to test their unity, their courage, and their love to its furthest limits.